Can you? Question for you today. Is the top 6 dead? So I shall
elaborate.
I will elaborate on that. So for years in the Premier League, we've kind of had this top 6 bias. We've had these big 6, haven't we? We've had the Sky Sports top 6, and they're the usual suspects, right? But with Man United's poor form, with the emergence of Newcastle, with Nottingham Forest now making waves and getting into the top, you've got teams like Brighton and Brentford all making a challenge to get in our thing. Is there such thing as the top 6 anymore? Or have we broken that monopoly on the usual top 6?
I think the top 6 is not positional, it's revenue. I think you've got the top 6 that bring in the most revenue. I think there will be changes to that now with Newcastle. So your top 6 is usually Liverpool, Arsenal, Man U, Chelsea, and then Spurs. It used to be. Now it's Man City have pushed in there now and pushed one of the teams down. Then you've got Newcastle pressuring in now. I think it was more a revenue thing. That's what I mean. Imagine me look at perfect example for me is Bournemouth. Bournemouth have done really well this year. Good manager. I didn't think he'd do as well as he did. Fair play to him, Areola. And then now the vultures are around them. They can't afford to turn down the money. So they've lost the centre back Huijsen to Real Madrid, 50 million. Kerkez is going to go to Liverpool, 40 million. Or about Semenyo is going to go. Yeah, they're all going to go. So they're going to lose the better players, and then this is where the economy comes in with the top 6. They then have to go out and find another gem. Use that money, say 40 million for Kerkez, and go and buy a replacement as good for 20. There's only so often you can do that. It's hard to do that on a regular basis. And then while at the same time, while improving the squad as well, that's where I think the top 6 will always rise. They might sink certain pits, but they'll always rise because of the revenue, unless it's monumentally spent badly. United. I think that's where they will always come. But what are your thoughts?
I think that's an interesting metric because I would have thought that traditionally the top 6 would have been the regular top 6 finishers in the league, right? In terms of league position, it's interesting that you measure it in terms of financial prowess, but even under that guideline, traditionally Newcastle wouldn't be in that 6, but you can't dispute they are now. I mean, all right, with the PSR rules, they're not going to get free reign to do what Man City did when they got taken over. But I mean, that's still breaking that top 6, isn't it? And the second part of that question is, so who would you consider the original top 6?
The original top 6, I'd say Arsenal, Liverpool.
Well, they're still there.
Man U. Chelsea.
I mean, have they dropped out of it? Have they dropped out of the top 6?
See, I think with United, they've dropped out of it, but because of the massive amount of revenues they have, if Man U really wanted to, they could literally go, right, we'll have this season. Say this season's finished. Okay, what we're going to do, we're going to go and get Bournemouth's manager, and we're going to buy the 4 best players from Bournemouth, the 2 best players from Brighton, and the 2 best players from Nottingham Forest. And they'd still have the money to do that. Yeah, they'd be a little bit inflated, and then they could just build that team and take the best. Instead of competing with them, just take the best. So they have to sink, and then they rise above. Because of the money that they have, it's completely different. I know there's some of the owners have the dough to keep those players, but look at Brighton. Every year they have to sell a player. They don't have to sell a player, but they sell a player. Yeah, they're clever enough to have 2 or 3 in the pipeline already at the club to step into, but there's only so often that can happen. Sometimes it ain't going to work, and that one signing might not work. And then suddenly, right, okay, now we're flapping, we're looking for second choice. Bournemouth have got players in the pipeline that might be ready to replace Semenyo or Evan Nilsson or Cliver. But how often can you do it or how often can the other teams constantly keep getting it wrong when they have the money to keep trying?
But have Man United got the money to do that? Look at what they're doing with wages. How are they not threatened by PSR rules? Look at the amount of money they're spending in the transfer window and the bids they're putting in. We spoke about Brian and Buemo. You know, we spoke about the other people thereafter. They spent money on Cunha, they spent money on Euro. We went through in another video the multiple hundreds of thousands of pounds they're paying a week. They're doing cost-cutting exercises. They've even let Alex Ferguson go as an ambassador. Have they got that money to go and do what you're suggesting?
With the revenue, yeah, I think they would. If it come down to it, and they needed to. Sancho's got another year in his contract. There's 300 grand gone, done. See you later. Then you've got all these other players on high wages. All they need, Man U really wanted, right, long-term project. We're going to start this again. Keep the public focus. Keep the revenue. The ship to me, I'd have kept Ten Hag over Ruben Amorim personally, in my opinion. But if they can keep the social media available and keep the Man U brand hot while these players, and they just shift them out. Once the players are gone, if you take into account, you got 300 grand a week for Sancho that will be freed up, 350 for Rashford freed up, 300 grand for Casemiro when his contract finishes at the end of the year. This is what me personally, I would have sold Fernandes just because of what they're looking to do. As good as he is, I think Fernandes in that team is the focal point of that team, and I don't think he's good enough to bring the team with him. I think he's good enough to do a better level. I don't think he's good enough to bring other players with him. While taking him out allows for a more of a team effort, and I think the best example is the PSG. They've let Neymar, Mbappe, and Messi go and built a team that is team unison. The pressing from Kvaratskhelia, Dembele, Doué. Doué is a beast. He's an absolute player. So they press as a team. They play how they team to get the best out of everyone. I mean, the running that Hakimi does, he's so far up and down that pitch is ridiculous. Mendes is a monster at left back, and I think if Man U let Fernandes go, I think they'd have that, be able to build a team mentality. Let these high earners go. Like, see you later, we don't need you. Like, build a squad of hungry players onto the big stage. They could be, I'm surprised they didn't go for Liam Delap, to be honest. I think Liam Delap would have fit them really well. A bit of a bully boy who would stretch defences, and if they want to drop into the box, he can still cause a threat, and it allows you your 10 positions to get in the game. But what do I know? I just watched the game, not involved.
I don't know how they're not up close to these PSR rules when the likes of, like, West Ham, who don't really pay for their ground because they got like what was deemed like deal of the century, haven't spent a ridiculous amount of money, have got rid of a load of high earners like Danny Ings and so on off the wage bill. We sold Declan Rice for 100 million and we need to sell to stay within PSR. But then there's Manchester United paying all these wages. But I don't want to make it too Man U centric, this whole thing. So who's the rest of your top six? Liverpool, traditionally Man United, that's up for debate. Man City, Arsenal, Chelsea.
Well, traditionally, it wasn't Man City, was it? Man City came in late from.
No, but I mean over the last few years.
Last few years, yeah. You've got Arsenal, Chelsea, Spurs, Liverpool, Man City would be your top 5, top 6, and then you'd have United in there as well. Now you've got Newcastle pressing.
Are Spurs still top 6?
Well, see, this is why I always look at it is the top 6 is said top 6, but I don't think it's positional top 6. Because remember before you had Everton knocking on the door and breaking into there, and I don't think it was top 6 based on that. I think it was they were the biggest revenue producing clubs. That's what allowed them the most money. So the revenue that, say, Spurs bring in at the minute can't be competed with by any of these promoted teams coming up. Any of the teams that are struggling, like even like, say, for example, Brentford's revenue is not the level of Spurs.
No, but don't forget Spurs are still paying off a £1 billion stadium.
But their revenue will allow that. I don't think Brentford will have that revenue. Even if you compared the Brentford revenue to United's, or say you compared it to what Man City bring in, what Chelsea bring in, what Liverpool bring in, and say Newcastle for the minute. I mean, personally, I think the next one that could possibly be like a sort of threat with revenue, I'd probably say it could be someone like Brighton or Sunderland. If Sunderland can stay up, I think Sunderland will be, because of where it is and the link to Newcastle. I mean, could you imagine if it's like, so you got the Saudis that own Newcastle. Imagine if the Qataris bought Sunderland, or an American owner bought Sunderland.
The Qataris are looking at buying Millwall. That's one for another day. So then,
Wow.
Newcastle got the financial power to be top six.
Yeah, I think they have. I think they've, especially because of the fan base, and I would say Newcastle's like reputation is global, just because they've had international stars over the past, and like as good as like say players like Brighton have had, and Forest and players like our age group now. You look at Ginola, Asprey, or Shearer, those sort of players were ridiculous, and they were global. They've had the stint in the Champions League. I think Newcastle can do that because they have the global appeal, and I think they could bring the players in with the money as long as they can keep
One
them to
club
PSR.
city.
Yeah,
One
that's
club
it. So,
city.
I mean, even with they were a big club and they had Mike Ashley there.
So Newcastle then potentially are now top six. So that makes it a top seven. Or have Man United been dropped out of it? So then how about Forest with their rich history?
This is why I go on the revenue, because the revenue will keep you in that position. Imagine.
So where
I
do you
look at it
stand
like,
on Forest's revenue?
Revenue. If Forest revenue, they've got a rich owner. Like he's got a couple of football clubs. If they can get it to the point where they have that global, but usually it only takes a couple of years in the Champions League, and especially if they've got the top five is going to be available and the winner of Europa League, I can see Forest winning Europa League. If they're in that, I think they'd be one of the favourites.
Yeah,
I think they're in the Conference League this year, though, aren't they?
yeah, they are now.
So,
Fell away at the end. But then what you
yeah,
said there about Sunderland, I could make the same argument about Leeds.
Leeds are the same. But they could quite easily do that. Like these are big clubs. You could easily say with the fan base they've got, the structure and the history they've got. Yeah, you can. But it's revenue. They've got to get the revenue on. They've got to have that consistency revenue to bring in the players, to get the fan base, to get the international recognition. So you've got teams like Leeds who could do that. You've got Sunderland who could do that. Forest who could do that. But if Forest in Europa League, to me, you got to put them as first or second favourites to win it. Like that. That's to me.
So I'll throw it to you full circle again as we end the video. Is the top six dead? Do we still have a top six? Do you include Newcastle in it? Does that make it a seven? Or is it a six, but Man United are not in the top six? Or are they still strong enough if you go on revenue? And then you look at the likes of Brighton, Brentford, Nottingham Forest. You've made cases for Sunderland and Leeds. So what do you think, Kanye? Is there still a top six in the Premier League?
I'd say top six is revenue, not position. Thoughts?
But is it only still six of them? Because if it's revenue alone, then it's seven because of Newcastle.
No, see, I think you've got 20 teams, the top six revenue. I think you've got the top six there, 20 teams, the top six. If the revenue is consistent, so if it's bouncing, then I could see it competing for that sixth position. If it's consistent, so if Newcastle can get a couple of years in the Champions League, I think they will be consistently up there with the revenue. I think Newcastle would take either Spurs or United's place if they continue to fall away.
So at present, one of the richest clubs in the world in Newcastle, you don't consider to be part of the top six by your own metric is done on revenue.
Right now, I'd say they are, but then no as well, because I'd probably lean towards no, because even though they are the richest club, the revenue is coming from external. It's not the revenue they're bringing in regards to the club. So if the owners disappeared, could that club continue? I think after a couple of years in the Champions League, yes, they could, because they still need to improve the squad. And well, I think everyone needs to improve the squad, but I think they need to improve certain aspects of it. But I think they're knocking on the door.
Let us know in the comments, are Newcastle top six? What makes the top six? Is there still a stranglehold with the top six, Sky Sports top six names? Is it done, in your opinion, on league position or in financial power? What's the difference between Man City being an outside, the money coming from an outside entity and being now considered top six, and Newcastle being an outside entity and not being considered top six, at least in Kanye's mind? Let us know below what you think and what your predictions are for next season's finishing top six and next season's financial top six. Till next time,